experiences of what it was like to have a disability and hopefully inform you. Also, we don't always get to look at adults who have disabilities, but here we are. You can look at us now. And so it's important to know that your kids are going to grow up into us one day. And it's great to have those kinds of models. So with that, can each of you share a little bit about what you do in your life, like whether it's work or play or family or whatever?
Hi, I'm Robert Dittman, and I do have to say in the beginning, I'm a lawyer, guilty, but any opinions expressed by me are my own and do not reflect the opinions of the United States government, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, or the United States Coast Guard. As a professional, I'm a licensed attorney. So if you need to get sued, or if you'd like to sue each other, please, come talk to me. We can make that happen. In fact, someone said, "My goodness, you won the lawsuit. You robbed me blind." And I went, and then they freaked out and they're like, "Oh, well, wait a minute." And I said, "No, you're fine. It's absolutely fine." So obviously, you can tell by the uniform, I serve as an officer in the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, which is actually a volunteer reserve. And it has an interesting history. And today, the U.S. Coast Guard is celebrating our 227th birthday. So it may be old, but we're still young at heart. So two different things. As a licensed attorney in my civilian practice, I own my own small little firm, just me and the dog. And the dog takes excellent shorthand, or short paw. We do indigent criminal defense. So I go in the jail, and there's an interesting story I'll briefly share real quick. Have you guys seen the tattoo where people are tattooing teardrops on their eyes? Yeah. Okay, apparently that's supposed to mean how many people they've killed. So I walk in the jail, and again, this is in a regular civilian suit, and the bailiff, who's the deputy sheriff, says, "Oh, your guy's he's very upset today. In fact, he's got teardrops on his face," meaning it as a joke. Well, I took him seriously. So I walk in there and I said, "How are you today? Or I know you're upset, but don't worry, we'll get through this. We'll get everything squared away. I'll do the best thing I can for you. I know you're kind of upset. Can I get you something to eat? Do you need a hug?" And the guy's like, "What?" And I said, "Well, I'm a friendly guy, and I understand that crying is not a sign of weakness. We all do it. I've had situations where I cry too." And the guy's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I'll be honest, the bailiff told me that you had some tears rolling down your face." And the guy goes, "What? Oh, it's fine, man. It's fine. We're good. And the guy, he was a pussycat after that. He was just the nicest guy in the world. And what I learned is that a disability can actually be an advantage because everybody else was not being nice to the guy because of the way he looked. I couldn't see him. So if you treat a person like a person, you're going to get person behavior. If you treat an animal like an animal, you're going to get animal behavior. So it's one example in my professional life where my blindness has been an advantage because instead of seeing the cover of the book, I was actually able to open up and read it. So, and we'll get into more of what I do. You guys probably noticed the aviation wings. I am the best budget cut helicopter pilot that taxes. I'm only kidding. We'll get into that story in a minute, but that is an example where my fellow aviators said, "You're blind, we need someone with your communication skills. Let's see what we can do about cutting the red tape and actually use your skills to keep people safe and get the mission done in the flight deck." And so it was an example of diversity and moving around barriers and focusing on a person's abilities rather than a disability.
Describe one barrier you experienced in K through 12 and what happened with that? Was it resolved ever? Was it not? What happened?
So K through 12, one of the challenges I had as a blind person, actually at the time I was visually impaired, so I still could see a little bit. And that's an interesting situation because you're living in two different worlds. So as a blind person, it is actually easier now that I can't see at all because I don't have to pretend as a sighted child or as a visually impaired child that I can see better than I can. So that's something that as educators and as parents you might want to look at. My mother, God bless her, would say, "Use your vision. Look at that. What do you see? Your vision is precious. Use it every day." As if it's a commodity, as if you use it and then you're going to lose it. Well, that's that's not a very good way of thinking, because it put pressure on me as a child to, when the vision was failing, it was my fault. And that's a problem. So it actually made things better when I couldn't see. I was like, oh, thank God I'm blind now. I don't have to think about this anymore. You know, I can't see it in the same way that you can. So that was a challenge. That's more of an internal challenge for me. One of the external challenges I had in elementary school and high school was I had a principal tell my father, oh, we don't want him in our school. Why don't you send him to a special school? And he's going to be distracting to the other students, which you couldn't do that today. You just couldn't. But in the early 80s and 90s, you could. And if it wasn't for, and I will mention her by name, there was a Region 20 educator by the name of Deborah Thompson, who was absolutely amazing, a tremendous advocate, and still is today. And she basically said, no, this is not going to work. I'm going to make sure that we can provide the resources and the help that this student needs. So Region 20 and other regions and organizations like it is absolutely pivotal to the success of the students of individuals with special education programs and things. So, and that actually transcends to adult. So one of the challenges I had in high school, if I may, is I wanted to serve in the ROTC program. And they said, well, you're blind, you're probably not going to become a leader, how would you put your uniform together, how are you going to find the bathroom independently, we don't think it's a good idea. And then many years later, I was invited back to come back and speak, and I walked through the door, and the individual who made those comments, of course, snapped to attention, and I said, good to see you again. And he says, wow, things have changed. And I said, you're right. You saw me on TV jumping out of an airplane. You obviously can see my uniform and the things that I've had the privilege of being able to do for this country. And he said, I never thought that would happen. And I guess I want you guys to remember that. I never thought that would happen, because that's important. Just because it doesn't cross our minds does not mean, that it doesn't cross the minds of our children and students. If they can dream it and they can think it, they should be provided the opportunity to at least try to achieve it. They may not, but if we provide them that opportunity, then we are not guilty of putting a barrier in front of them, even if we don't know it. Does that make sense?
So if each of you could talk about how your disability has impacted you on the job and what accommodations you use.
As a licensed attorney, you can't make this stuff up. You just never know what you're going to get. So the first day when I started practicing as a student attorney, I got an internship to this has a wonderful, grandiose title. I was a legal clerk with the Texas Attorney General Child Support Division. Any clients in here? No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so I'm there in court, and they tried to figure out, well, normally what a legal clerk does is you get relegated to, which is unfortunate, but that's a lot of times what happens. That was not the case in this job, but normally what they do is they take legal clerks and they stick you in an office and you do tons of research, and if you can survive the other end, then they said, yes, you've paid your dues. Well, they couldn't do that with me because the government computer, God bless them, was not accessible. And they said, well, we need to have the screen reader tested to see if it's going to be a security breach. And I'm thinking, yeah, the Chinese are going to infiltrate JAWS, and yeah, that's going to be interesting. So they said, well, we can't use the computer system. Okay. And we can't give you stacks of papers to sort. No, can't read them. Well, what can you do? And I said, well, I can speak. They said, okay, so we'll have you negotiate. And I said, all right, I can do that. So my job in the courtroom as a student attorney was to negotiate an agreed order between the child's mother, the child's father, and the state, all three parties. Well, we had an individual come in. I obviously can't give their name, but they had a disability. And so I'm standing there with with my supervising attorney, the judge, and this individual, and they said, well, I can't pay child support. And the judge says, well, why not? And he says, I'm blind. And he says, okay, well, why does that preclude you from paying child support? Well, because I can't see. I mean, I can't work. You do not understand, Your Honor, the tremendous strain and horrible life I lead as a blind person. And I cannot work, and I will never succeed. And so therefore, I cannot pay child support. And the individual said, and so he goes this whole soliloquy about, I can't do this, I can't do that. And the judge finally stops him and goes, counselor, shall I tell him or do you want to tell him? And the guy says, tell me what? And I said, well, sir, I happen to be blind. He goes, you can't be a lawyer and be blind. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. Here, reach down, feel my seeing eye, dog. And he goes, oh, okay, so what do I do? And I said, start paying. So then with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, again, it's one thing we learned in the Coast Guard is take care of your shipmates and they'll take care of the mission. And that's a fact. You know, we have to rely on each other. We play as a team. There are no individuals in the Coast Guard. Every Guardian works as a team member. So I just completed a high-intensity course called Serve and Be Ready for Emergencies. SABRE, the French spelling. There's another one which is stand at bar really enjoying refreshment, but that's a different spelling and we don't really go there. But the SABRE training, the Serve and Be Ready for Emergencies, that is a week-long course where you go through your surface operations, which are going to be your boat crew training, and your air operations, which is where I got selected, and so I'm there in the back of the aircraft. One of the challenges is what, and this is a perceptual challenge, what is a blind person going to do as a member of an air crew? Now that's not my primary job. My primary job is I'm a unit commander. I command the local flotilla here, Flotilla 7-4, which is the auxiliary unit here in San Antonio. So that's my primary mission. I also serve as a JAG. And so you're thinking, yeah, aviation wings, blind, JAG, didn't they make a TV show about that? You know, JAG, which I'm trying to get into. So I serve as a lawyer. And then finally the aircrew thing popped up. So they said, well, what can a blind person do in the back of an aircraft? I can listen. So we're flying along on a training mission. We have traffic below us at I'm trying to get the altitudes right, 2,500 feet. Okay, fine. There's a 500-foot separation, minimum 500-foot separation. So we're at 3,000 feet. And so the controller says, descend. That's what I heard first. And that's when my brain said, wait a minute, descend, this doesn't sound right. You have traffic at 2,500 feet, descend to this altitude. And I'm thinking, no, that doesn't work. Well, the pilot didn't catch it because he's busy plotting a navigation course. The co-pilot didn't catch it because he's doing flight seat training. The observer didn't catch it for whatever reason, but I caught it. And so I tapped the aircraft commander on the shoulder and I said, sir, you might want to know that they said traffic at 2,500, we're at 3,000, they want us to descend. Is that correct? Because at the end of the day, it's the aircraft commander's call. He said, yeah, let's check that again. So he radios back in and says, no, I mean ascend. Yeah, we can deal with that. That sounds a lot better. So there again, it's a challenge of how do I convince the rest of the air crew or the rest of the ground crew that I have something meaningful to contribute? Would you not say that dealing with safety issues is a pretty significant contribution? Because what would have happened, God forbid, if we would have descended? There could have been bad things. I believe they call that an uncontrolled descent. The U.S. Coast Guard is unique when compared to any of the other uniformed services. And you've got U.S. Navy, U.S. Army, U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Coast Guard. There's two more that people don't know about called the United States Public Health Service and the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Commission Corps. God bless them for their long name, right? NOAA, they're weather and scientists. So the Coast Guard is unique in that we operate three uniformed components. We have active duty, we have reserve, and then we have a volunteer reserve called the auxiliary. The volunteer reserve, the auxiliary, began in 1939. It was the only reserve. A bunch of boat owners got together and said, you know what, we think war is coming. Let's see if we can assist the Coast Guard. And so they went ahead and convinced the Coast Guard to stand this program up, and it was the Coast Guard Reserve until 1941 when Pearl Harbor hit, and Congress said, yeah, we think that's a good idea. Let's try to stand up another program and actually pay people. So then they renamed the Volunteer Reserve the Auxiliary. The unique thing about the Auxiliary is age and physical disability do not matter. It does not matter your age. It does not matter your physical disability or your challenges. So a blind person, a deaf person, a stuttering person, any type of disability you can think of. The question is, do you have the character, the fortitude? Can you live the Coast Guard core values? And then the next question is, well, are they going to get paid? The answer is no. I've served for 17 years with the Auxiliary, and then previously with another program called the Civil Air Patrol. That's an Air Force program. It's not exactly like the Coast Guard Auxiliary. It's a little different, but it is an option. So if you have students that want to serve in uniform and are willing to serve for the privilege of serving this country, and I say service a lot because it is a service. It's not about me. Okay, although I do derive a lot of pleasure about putting the uniform on and having some unique challenges and having the ability to have a national impact. But it's about contributing to the mission. So if you have a student that wants to do that and they say, I really want to serve, they may not get their branch of choice. If they go in there saying, I want to be a Marine, well, that's great. Or I want to join the Coast Guard as a rescue swimmer. Well, a blind person as a rescue swimmer just doesn't really fly. Probably at night, maybe in zero visibility. Oh, can I digress really quickly? Yes. I promise. So the wings, I keep going back to them because it's my latest accomplishment. I'm kind of proud of them. One of the things I had to go through is what's called underwater helicopter egress training, which is also called shallow water egress training. So what they do is they put you in a chair, they strap you down in a 5-point harness, and they invert you underwater. So they flip you upside down underwater, and you have to remember steps. 1, grab your reference point. 2, put your oxygen bottle in. 3, jettison the door. 4, disconnect your ICS, which is your in-flight communication device. 5, wait for all rotation to stop. 6, disconnect your harness. And 7, egress the aircraft. I hope I added that right. There's no math on the LSAT, just so you guys know. That's why people become attorneys, so we don't have to add. But anyway, so I'm in a zero visibility environment, and we actually had 2 people on the particular training class I was in. They were active duty, they were regular aviators, and they panicked. I said, Chief, why did they panic? He goes, well, you don't understand. I mean, it's really freaky when you get flipped upside down underwater and you can't see. And I said, really? That bothers people? I said, Chief, you want to stick me in a zero visibility environment and you think I'm going to panic? I live in a zero visibility environment. This is like Disney World. So you get to do it 4 times. And I said, well, can I do it more than that? And they said, no, this is not an amusement park. I said, come on, I'm having fun. This is awesome. This is a great time. So again, that's a situation where society says, I don't know if you can do this. Where I was able to motivate the other members of my class, because again, we work as a team, where I was like, if I can do this, you can do this. It's a piece of cake. Let's do it. Suck it up, buttercup. Get the mission done, right? So.
It's other people's anxiety gives you anxiety for something you'd be totally fine with. And so how to talk about that and how to have the language and how to do that. And I think having kids advocate early on and as early as possible in the classroom, in the school, so that they have those opportunities, because once you're out of high school, once you're out of college, you're on your own. And so it's really important to develop those skills.
One of the things that my dad did, which was very helpful, is when you're having ARDs is, do we still use that term, ARD? Yes. I feel so old.
That's not a California term, so what's that?
Okay, well, it's, what is it?
IEP meeting. Oh, okay.
Okay, cool, yeah. Y'all speak that language. Yeah, what was it? Let's see, aggravate, redo it, and then dismiss it all and start over, right? ARD. So, anyway, no. So when you're having the ARD meetings, invite the child if it's age appropriate. So what we would do is I would sit there from probably about 9 on, and they would say, well, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. And I raised my hand and I said, no, he's not. And so, well, you don't have a choice. And I said, yes, I do. And it taught me to be an advocate for myself in the beginning. Now, one of the challenges that also gives the student is, and I still have this challenge today, is I have to be mindful that my greatest asset does not become my greatest weakness, which is my enthusiasm, motivation, and advocacy. Because sometimes that can. I had a situation where I had a 4th grade teacher, Ms. Woodsharkey. God bless her, she was amazing. But she was trying to go over a paper with me about what I did wrong. And I, as a young 9-year-old, became offended. How dare you tell me what I did wrong? I am perfect. And I said, I am here to learn, not to be criticized. She wasn't ready for a 9-year-old student to tell her that. So that's where the advocacy kind of got me in trouble, because in looking back now, she wasn't criticizing me. She's just trying to tell me what I did wrong. So giving that constructive feedback was absolutely a part of the learning process, but I was so wrapped up in trying to advocate for myself that I misread. So I would just encourage that if you have the opportunity, please allow the students to come and teach them their own language. Teach them to say, I'm blind. You know, you don't have to use the buzzwords. Call it like you see it. I'm blind. I'm deaf. I have Asperger's. Is it Asperger's? Asperger's? How do you say it properly?
Asperger's.
Asperger's. Okay, very well. So I mean, teach them the language, because it's their life. It is their perception, and a person's perception is their reality.
My name is Sandy Hamilton, and I teach at Medina Valley Middle School in Castroville. But this is kind of more personal because my son has cerebral palsy. And he's 21. He's just graduated from high school last year, so he is going to a junior college. But he went to get a job this summer, and it seems like he applied everywhere, McDonald's, I mean, just everywhere. But it seems like he was kind of discriminated against. You know, I'm not going to say he was. I can't prove that, but
I can.
He has not had a job all summer, and he is, you know, he's a good kid. He would work hard, but nobody hired him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what do you do about that?
What does he like to do?
He's going to school to be an auto mechanic.
Okay.
Which is something I was surprised at because he shakes a lot.
Sure.
And but he loves it. And before that, he always wanted to go into the military. So
Well, the auxiliary is an option. I'll be honest, shameless recruiting. In fact, one of the people in my unit, my comm officer in my current unit, has cerebral palsy as well. So there are people who, again, the auxiliary is unique. The active duty and reserve don't have that. They have physical restrictions. The auxiliary does not. But there's a gentleman in my unit. In fact, he went through SABRE training with me. He did not do the egress training in the sweat chair, but he did do the survival swim. Where you have to swim 75 meters, tread water for 5 minutes, and there were some accommodations and some survival equipment we did, but don't, well, please don't. See, we must be friendly, you know. Don't let him get discouraged. And the
set limits for him, or said when he was little, he was always going to be president, and he was going to serve in every, you know, he was going to be in the Navy and the Army, and he was going to do it all. And we never told him he couldn't.
Good.
Ever. I mean, you just don't do that. But he was in ROTC all 4 years of high school, but they did, with some of the physical training, he,
right.
Did participate.
Silver Patrol Squadron at Stetson Field.
Right, correct. And then our unit's here in town
I think
too.
Blackwood still has one too.
Okay.
Right, so you've got some, if he wants to do the Air Force, Civil Air Patrol's an option for him. If he wants to do the Coast Guard, there's an option. I mean, obviously, I'm the unit commander. I'll be happy to give you my contact. But there's options, and it's important because the other thing I'll tell you quickly is I never planned on being an attorney. I never planned on it at all. And I never thought I would be an attorney. When I first became a lawyer, decided to become a lawyer, I was working somewhere else, and I thought, man, this is great, although I can't do this for the next 5 years. I just, no. And so I woke up one day and I said, I hate my job. And a friend of mine said, well, what are you going to do now? I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. They said, you don't know anything about being a lawyer. I said, you're right, I don't. So we Googled it. But the Civil Air Patrol and the Coast Guard Auxiliary provided the background training. So as a comm officer, I knew how to run radio equipment. Well, that translates to a job if I wanted to go become a dispatcher for a police department or for VIA or for a taxi cab, I've already got some training and transferable skills. If you want to work for the media, okay, well, what if I was a public affairs officer in either the Civil Air Patrol or the Coast Guard Auxiliary? I mean, so there's a lot of transferable skills that you've got. Plus, if someone reads your resume and they say, you know, Officer, United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, served X number of years, these are the awards, these are what you've done. Yes. It costs you, I mean, time, talent, and treasure, that's true, but in anything in life, you're going to expend time, talent, and treasure anyway. So that's an investment. The last thing I'll say is that don't be afraid to consult an attorney. You know, I applied as a signal intercepts officer with the National Security Agency. And I'll never forget what the woman said is, we don't have a job for someone like you. And I was so appalled. And I thought to myself, wow, in this day and age, in the 21st century, we still have individuals who, now, is that a reflexive statement of the entire agency? Absolutely not. I know people in NSA. They're a great organization. They do a lot of great work in national security. But one person's perception could have painted the whole picture. So if McDonald's tears you down, try to go back to another one or try to talk to another manager. And if that doesn't work, I would encourage you, consult an attorney. You know, I'm not trying to be litigious, but if you guys don't advocate for the rights of your students and your students don't advocate for their rights, again, when our facilitator said, once you're out there on your own, you've got a less of, you don't have as many resources, so use your resources now.